A lot of people are surprised to find out that Uber and Lyft drivers can't see where riders are headed until drivers physically arrive at the rider's location and swipe to start the trip. But there may be some times where a rider gets in and you need to cancel the ride, and that can be a pretty tricky situation. So how do you handle it? Harry here with the Rideshare Guy, and today we're going to talk about what to do in this type of situation when you need to cancel on Uber passengers based on their destination, and really whether you can even do it in the first place. So as mentioned, you don't know where passengers are headed until you start the trip. So in this video, I'm actually talking about cancellations after you've started the trip. So can you do this or not? Well, Uber actually has a policy on this, and the answer is that it depends. I found this in their deactivation policy online, and basically what they say, and I quote, "It is not acceptable to discriminate on the basis of a rider's destination." What does this mean? "We understand how important it is to fit driving around your life rather than the other way around. It is not a violation of these guidelines to pass on a trip because the trip does not work for you. For example, it would interfere with a personal commitment or prior obligation such as a job, doctor's appointment, school pickup, or family event, but canceling trips or using features in the Uber app to avoid receiving trip requests solely for the purpose of avoiding a particular neighborhood due to the characteristics of the people or the businesses that are located there violates these guidelines and may cause you to lose access to your account." So basically, a little bit of a gray area, right? This is Uber's policy and it's in their deactivation policy, but they also say that you may lose access to your account. So they're not saying that they will deactivate you. So there's a lot of ambiguity here. And the reason why is because this comes from this CPUC, which is the California Public Utilities Commission requirement all the way back in 2013 that basically tells transportation network companies like Uber they can't discriminate. And it seems like Uber's actually now applying this policy all across the country. And, the way though that they're applying it, I don't know that, it makes a whole lot of sense, and it's very clear because they're saying that, hey, if it cancels on some type of, personal reason that you have, like, you're going to go pick up a friend or something like that, then it's okay. But if you're canceling because of maybe their skin tone or you don't like the passenger, you can't do that. So, I think it leaves a lot of room for interpretation. So what I wanted to do was go over a few different situations where you might need to cancel on a passenger and see whether we think it's okay or not based off of Uber's guidelines. So the first situation that might come up where you want to cancel on a passenger is, let's say a passenger gets into your car and you're on a bonus program, like an Uber Quest, for example, that says do 20 trips in the core area and you'll get a $60 bonus, right? You want to do as many short trips as possible within that area. And let's say you're going to get a ride that's going to draw you way out of that bonus zone. You can tell that passenger, okay, unfortunately, I can't do this, and end the trip and select do not charge rider. And this should be okay due to Uber's policies. Now, let's say another situation. Let's say you don't have enough gas or you're in an electric vehicle and you don't have enough charge. I would say this also should be okay. Third situation, let's say you have to be somewhere within a certain time frame, like picking up your kids from school, or maybe you're commuting somewhere. This also should be okay. This is actually the example that they used in the deactivation policy. Now, where it gets a little tricky, let's say it's a late night, you're in an area that you're not that comfortable or familiar with, and you get a passenger who wants to go to a part of town. Maybe it's a less desirable part of town. This seems to be like more of a gray area. This seems to be what Uber's policy is trying to prevent you from doing. Even if you feel unsafe, I guess it could be looked upon as discriminatory. So that's what Uber's policy seems to be trying to prevent. So I would say that may not be okay. And then finally, let's say a passenger gets into the car and you just don't like the color of their skin or their sex or their race or something like that. You can't do that according to Uber's policy. You can't deny a ride and cancel that passenger because of that, which, so I think that's pretty clear in their policy. Now, where it gets complicated is just because you may be in the right according to Uber's policy, if that passenger still complains, what we've seen in the past with things like service dogs and some of their other kind of gray area policy issues is that even if you're doing everything right and kind of following their policies or following the law, we've still seen reports of drivers being deactivated or really even being threatened because, think about, right, if a passenger reports this to Uber, they're dealing with their customer service representative, and the customer service rep might have no idea what they're even talking about, right? And so they may say, they may trigger something that, oh, this driver canceled because of sex, when really it was, I don't know, you didn't want to take your kid, or you had to take your kid to school, right? So it's sort of, you're putting it in the hands of people that don't really know what's going on. And, we've actually been seeing reports from drivers in California that Uber is sending a nastygram, what we like to call basically a threatening email to drivers who have been canceling rides in these types of situations, and even some who haven't. Now, I haven't heard of a lot of drivers getting actually deactivated for this, and like we saw in Uber's policy, it says that you may lose access to the app because of this if you're doing this, but obviously my advice is I don't really agree with this, since I think Uber is sort of forcing or coercing really through these nastygram emails for you to take rides. And really at the end of the day, you kind of have to do what's best for your personal situation. But I can also see the other side of the coin where it starts to get a little bit tricky if you're denying rides just because you don't like the skin tone of someone's, your passenger or whatever it might be. So I guess what I would say is if you're super reliant on your Uber income, you'll probably want to use this cancellation strategy sparingly, right? You probably don't want to cancel on too many passengers after you've already started the trip. Obviously, if you do it beforehand, they'll never know, and you can't get in nearly as much trouble that way. This is for more once you start the trip and see where the passenger is headed, or some other type of situation. Now, there are definitely times though where this can save you a ton of time and money. Like that bonus situation where I described, right? If you have to drive 2 hours south, or even an hour south and then an hour and a half back in traffic, that's going to be a pretty unprofitable ride. And I think once drivers become a lot more savvy and start to get more cutthroat, they start to maybe ignore or cancel some of these rides, and it's a little awkward. But if you handle it well with your passenger, you're going to put more money in your pocket. So I get why Uber has this policy, but I'm never a fan of the way that they tend to bully drivers into taking certain rides or taking Uber Pool or taking certain actions that go against your personal interests. So I guess what I would say is I draw the line at, if it's going to cause me if a ride is going to cause me to really have a significant bad impact on my earnings, a negative impact on my earnings, maybe that's where I would sort of draw the line and, cancel on a passenger in that situation. But hey, if it's just going to a part of town that I'm not as comfortable or familiar with, sometimes that's part of the job. And being a driver, providing service to people, you need to do things like that. So just understand sort of the risk and your personal situation. If you're heavily reliant on income and you're going to kind of really take advantage of this strategy, you have to understand that, hey, Uber says right here in their policy that they may deactivate you for this. So use it sparingly in that situation. Hopefully that clears things up. If you guys do have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to leave them below or send us an email. We release new videos every single Tuesday and Thursday, and sometimes a bonus video on the weekend. So make sure you subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. All right, drive safe, everyone.